Hi everybody. In this video we will be continuing to talk about the right to die. The article that I want to address today or discuss is by Ezekiel Emanuel. I think it's called Whose Right to Die? Whose Right to Die? Okay, so let me give you a little bit of an outline. We will talk about 4 myths about the right to die, or I'll just call it 4 myths just to keep the outline short and simple. 2 questions, and then 4 arguments, or 4 reasons against the right to die. Okay, just as a little bit of background, Ezekiel Emanuel is a longtime medical ethicist. He's now at the University of Pennsylvania. He was for many years, I think about a decade, the chair of the bioethics department at the National Institutes of Health. That's where I met him when I was a fellow there, a bioethics fellow, and he was my boss, basically. He also has worked closely with he did work closely with the Obama administration. He's one of the main architects of Obama's Affordable Care Act, so-called Obamacare. And more recently, he's written several op-eds, opinion pieces in the New York Times about coronavirus and what we should be doing about it. For example, just a couple of weeks ago, he and some other co-authors wrote a piece called something like how the coronavirus may force doctors to decide who can live and who dies. Because, there are not enough supplies, we can't save everybody. What kind of criteria are we going to use to determine which people get higher priority and which people get lower priority? Okay, so he's a very active bioethicist. I know also he's written for a long time advocating against the so-called right to die, against active euthanasia, against physician assistance in dying. One of the claims he has made before, and he's told me in person when I've talked to him about it, but that doesn't appear in this article, is something that I mentioned last time. Let's see if I can go back to the legal status. He says, look, this is a tiny problem. Like, he's thinking on a kind of political scale, and he says, like, if we're going to be passing laws for the whole country, this is a minuscule kind of problem to be talking about where only hundreds, potentially thousands of people are affected. We should be focusing on things that affect lots of people, like, providing healthcare for the poor and so on. Okay? Okay, so we're going to consider his arguments against the right to die here. Okay, the first thing he wants to do is he wants to go over some myths. And these myths are important to him because he often talks to advocates for the right to die. These often are not just advocates, but activists, kind of protesters, people who are, actively agitating the government to change the laws to allow or to legalize physician assistance in dying, for example, or potentially even active euthanasia. All right. And he says, after many years of talking to these people, he's come to the conclusion that many of the people are confused. They have incorrect facts about euthanasia, about the right to die. Okay, so one incorrect fact that they have, he says, is myth number 1 is, here's the myth, interest in the right to die is recent and due to technological advances, like maybe chemotherapy, ICUs, ventilators. Okay, and he says, no, in fact, the issues and arguments have been around for 2,000 plus years, not 200, sorry, 2,000 plus years. Okay, and if anything, the technological advance that spurred our interest in the issue was anesthesia. Morphine, which I mentioned last time, around the 1870s. Okay, so after we got anesthesia, we could gently let people die or kill them, right? And then we started thinking, like maybe killing someone isn't so bad. I mean, before, if you had to kill someone, it would be maybe painful and gruesome and bloody, but with morphine, it didn't have to be that way. Okay, so that's myth number 1. Oops, myth number 1. Okay, myth number 2. Okay, myth number 2 And this is something, again, activists, advocates for the right to die often cite these statistics to him, and he wants to say, no, 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 those statistics you are citing are confused, they're inaccurate, or they are kind of summarized inaccurately or misleadingly, which is the right to die, which again, for our purposes means both PAD, physician assistance in dying, and active euthanasia, okay, is widely endorsed by the public, okay? And, you know, Emanuel has complaints about this because he says when people take these polls, when they ask the public these questions, they ask them very leading questions. They'll ask them questions like, do you support a person's right to choose the timing and manner of his own death? Okay, when you put it in that way, most people are going to say, yeah, that seems right. You should be able to choose the timing and manner, and it's my right. You know, whenever you ask someone, do you have the right to blank? People are going to say, yes, I have the right to that, no matter how you fill in the blank, right? So it's kind of a misleading question. All right. But what Emanuel wants to complain about is not even necessarily the misleadingness of the question, but the following. He says, the support is neither strong nor deep. Okay? He says more accurate would be a rule of thirds. Okay? And the rule of thirds would go like this. 1/3 oppose it, the right to die, no matter what. You know, maybe the religious conservatives or something. 1/3, no matter what you say to them, they're going to be against it. Okay? Another third support it, no matter what. Okay? So these thirds, this third, the other extreme, they say, yeah, we love it. Doesn't matter, like the details don't matter, just yes, we want the right to die. Okay, but it's this middle third that concerns Emanuel. But the middle third, the middle 1/3, supports it sometimes, maybe I'll not even put sometimes, occasionally, but opposes it most of the time. Okay, so the middle third says, okay, maybe I'll put it this way. We tend to support it, the right to die, when it's abstract and hypothetical. Okay? But most people, but this middle third tends to support the right to die only for kind of unremitting pain, okay, and not otherwise. So they will ask something like, is this person in a ton of pain that you cannot get rid of? If so, then yes, we support their right to die. If not, then no, we don't support them being able to kill themselves in this way, or, you know, have a doctor kill them in this way, all right? And if you think about it, that sounds reasonable. Okay, if you're in pain that can't be controlled, yes, you have the right to die. But if you're not, then maybe, you know, it shouldn't be up to doctors to decide whether you die. Okay. That actually leads to the third myth. Okay, what about this kind of unremitting pain? Okay, so the myth says like this. The myth goes like this. People most interested in right to die are the terminally ill with uncontrollable pain. Okay, so that's the myth. The myth says that people who want the right to die are in a ton of pain that they cannot control. And then here's the fact, according to Emanuel, if you look at the data, look at the surveys, he says pain plays a role in the decision to get life-ending drugs only 1/3 of the time. So they send these people these surveys, the people who request life-ending drugs. They ask them things like, are you in uncontrollable pain? And is that why, or part of the reason why you wanted these drugs? Only 1/3 of them even check that box. Yeah, I'm in uncontrollable pain and that's part of the reason why I want it. Okay? And further, it was the sole, and further pain was the sole cause of the decision in literally no cases. No one only checked the pain box and did not check anything else, okay? In contrast, the most important thing, determinant for wanting life-ending drugs was depression and psychological distress. psychological distress, and kind of lack of dignity. Okay, so yes, pain was mentioned a third of the time, but most of the people who want life-ending drugs, they are sad. Okay, they are depressed. They say they have no dignity. People have to bathe them, go to the, wipe their bottom after they go to the bathroom. They have to pee into a bag, all these kinds of things. So they say it's lack of dignity that actually makes people request these drugs, not pain. Okay. Myth number 4. Myth number 4. Okay. Myth number 4, the myth says, data from the Netherlands shows no slippery slope. Okay, what this means is a slippery slope is when you start by allowing X, but you eventually slip down to allowing Y, which is bad. Where Y is bad, I'll put it that way. Where Y is bad, okay? So a slippery slope might be, for example, if the Netherlands legalized active euthanasia and then doctors just started going around killing all the minorities or all the, just started killing people left and right indiscriminately, that would be bad and that would be a slippery slope, all right? You started with this ideal goal of allowing, only merciful deaths, and you ended up with like just slaughtering people, okay? That would be bad. All right, so the myth, according to Emanuel, people say, hey, look at the Netherlands. They have legalized active euthanasia for decades. The country didn't fall apart. Nothing is horrible there. It's still running great. All the laws are, all the protections in place have worked. There's nothing bad going on in the Netherlands. All right, so Emanuel says, no, that's not actually true. Okay, so the data, he says, suggest people are cutting corners in the Netherlands. Okay, so he goes into some data that I don't want to go into too much detail about, but we can say, I can go over some of the corners that he mentions have been cut. Okay, so let's see. Only, he says, 41% of the doctors require patient reaffirmation of decision to end life. Okay, so there's a regulation that says in the Netherlands, if the patient wants to end his or her life, he or she has to make that request not just one time, but like at least twice over the course of however many weeks, like maybe 6 weeks or something like that. You have to say it once, think about it for a few weeks, say it again. Okay, so according to some data, not all the doctors there require this reaffirmation, saying it the second time. All right? Some MDs skirted other rules, like consultation with other, second opinion. Sorry, I'll just put it that way. Getting a second opinion. Okay? So there's another rule in place that said it can't just be one lone maverick cowboy doctor who decides to kill you. It has to be that the doctor talks about your case with a second doctor and the two of you agree. The two doctors agree. All right? Okay, and there's some other stuff too, but I think these are maybe the most provocative ones. All right. Okay, so those are 4 myths. Emanuel says, now, really what we need to do is distinguish 2 questions. 2 questions. The first question is the right to die correct, or sorry, maybe I'll put it this way. Is physician assistance in dying or active euthanasia the right move in this or that particular case? Okay? And then the second question, and he thinks this is the important one, the second question is, should we have a legal or a policy legalizing active euthanasia or PAD? Okay, so he says, look, these are very different questions. So you might give me a story, example, Rachel's throat cancer case. You might give me a story like the throat cancer case where I could even agree with you, yeah, the right thing to do there is to kill that guy quick so that he doesn't have to suffer the indignity and the pain, the suffering of dying from dehydration, all right? But Emanuel says that's not the issue. The issue for us, just like the issue for abortion, the issue is what should be legal, what should be illegal. Not in this particular case of a young teenage girl who got knocked up and raped and, etc. Should we, should she get an abortion? No, that's not the issue. The issue is the legality of, in this case, not abortion, but in this case, active euthanasia and the right to die for the whole country. All right. Okay, and so he wants to focus on the second question, even while he, in a way, concedes the first question. And I guess I'll just, I'll reveal all the cards here. So Ezekiel Emanuel, he's going to say no. Active euthanasia and PAD should remain illegal, or should not remain, because PAD is illegal only in most states, but it's legal in a handful of states. Should be illegal, I'll put it that way. Okay? There's an objection that he considers. The objection, what about those cases like Rachel's throat cancer, where it seems clear that PAD, or not even it seems clear, where Ezekiel Emanuel admits that PAD, active euthanasia, are the right move. Okay? So he even admits, yes, you can tell him an individual story where he thinks the right thing to do is to push a bunch of morphine. All right. Well, what he says is, it's kind of shocking, and he goes over this, it's very subtle, but he basically says those things should remain illegal, but sometimes doctors should be willing to do illegal things, okay, to help their patients. And in fact, this is kind of already done. I've told this story before. When my dad died, he had pancreatic cancer, which was really tough to go through. And then when they finally pulled all the tubes and got ready for him to die because he was no longer getting support, breathing support, they also pushed a ton of fentanyl through his veins. Okay, and the fentanyl basically made him stop breathing much more quickly than if he had just been allowed to kind of die on his own, all right? So if they had just pulled the tubes, he might have been struggling to breathe for hours, okay, maybe even days. When my cousin's mother died, they pulled the tube. She lived after that for 4 more days. Her mother, totally brain dead and so on. But it was agony to sit there for her for 4 days and watch her mom die. My dad didn't go through that because the doctors pushed a bunch of fentanyl. Now, me, I'm a medical, person. I know what fentanyl is and does. I knew when I saw it going through, yeah, he's going to die quick. Like, he died in like 45 seconds after they pulled the tubes and pushed the fentanyl. He was dead. All right? I didn't complain. I knew what was happening. I thought, yeah, this is a good thing. Now, Emmanuel's point is this stuff, well, that's not Emmanuel's point. My point is this kind of stuff happens already. Doctors kind of do these things under the table. They'll push fentanyl in cases where they know that the patient doesn't want to suffer. Everyone's just waiting for them to die. But it happens kind of piecemeal. For example, my cousin's mom didn't get it, but my dad did get it. And so my cousin had to sit there for 4 days by her mom's bedside, not sleeping, not going home. She had 2 kids at the time. Whereas I only had to suffer for 45 minutes, all right? So it's inconsistent, but it does happen. Emanuel says it should continue to be like that. It should be illegal, but doctors should be willing to do illegal things kind of under the table, all right? That's his position. All right. Now, finally, what's wrong with the right to die? 4 reasons against the right to die. Okay? So, here's one. A common argument for the right to die is we want comfort and reassurance for the option if we need it. Okay? So this is a very common argument he sees from activists. We're not all going to use the drugs or this option. We just want to have it available. It will make us feel secure that we can have control if we need to, when or if that time comes. All right. Emanuel's reply, though, is he says, for every cancer patient comforted by this discussion and the right to die, okay, another decreases trust in the medical system because of the same discussion. Okay, there's a little bit of an element, a tinge of like kind of racial difference here and socioeconomic difference here. So it tends to be the people who want the comfort and the reassurance of the reassurance. These tend to be educated, wealthy, white people. All right. And the people who decrease trust in the medical system because of the discussion, like the doctor says, hey, let me tell you some options where you can die more quickly. We can kill you even if you want us to, or we can give you drugs for you to kill yourself. The people who decrease trust in the medical system when they hear that topic broached tend to be poor, less educated, not white. Okay, brown. Okay. Okay, number two. Here's another thing. Emanuel says, it's really hard to take care of someone who's dying. I've done it twice. Both my parents died, and I took care of both of them before they died. And I agree with this. It's really hard. It's a full-time job plus more, and it's really depressing. It's really sad. They're not getting any better. They're just getting worse. Okay? It's a lot easier to just inject them. So if the option is there, it'll be tempting to use it. Okay? So he says, it's so hard to take care of people who are dying. If you give them an easier way out, people will want to go for it for the wrong reason. They'll have the bad motivation, not because they want things to be better for grandma, not because they want to ease grandma's suffering, but because they just don't want to have to put up the work of giving her a bath and changing her diapers and etc. Okay? All right, let me do another two reasons here. Let's say third and fourth arguments or reasons against right to die. Okay, if we allow the right to die, it's the patient's responsibility or burden to decide whether to use it. And we can blame them for not doing so. So what he means by this is if grandma, I'll put it this way, Eric's example, if grandma wants to live, and wants all measures taken, then she might feel guilty, for wanting that if the right to die is legal. Okay, so her grandparents are telling her, are you sure you want, to live, Grandma? It's going to cost us so much money. You're going to bankrupt us. Don't you want to die so that we can have more money? That she will be feeling that kind of guilt and that kind of pressure if she decides she wants to live and if the right to die is legal. Now, if the right to die is illegal, then she just automatically gets all measures taken. She doesn't have to feel guilty for wanting that. She doesn't even have to express that she does want it because it's just the default. It's the only possible option. Okay? Here is an analogy. There are actually two analogies. Maybe I'll just go over one. So the use of uniforms in, say, grade school. Okay, so there, some grade schools use uniforms. Some kind of rich private schools use uniforms, but also some poor schools in poorer areas also use uniforms. Well, focus on the schools in poorer areas. Why do they use uniforms? Well, typically it's because the students there may not be able to afford enough clothes so that they can go to school and not be made fun of. All right, so now suppose a school that already has a school in an impoverished area that has uniforms, like a grade school. They are considering removing the uniform requirement. So they say, hey, we're thinking about lifting the uniform requirement so that next year you can wear whatever, or not even next year, let's say for the end of this year, maybe a couple more months left in this school year, you can wear whatever clothes you want. Okay, some students might protest lifting the uniform requirement, the requirement for uniforms. Why might they do that? Okay, but why? After all, they already have their uniforms, and they can continue to wear them if they want, even while letting others wear other things, right? So the response to these, okay, so if some students say, no, we want to keep the rule for requiring everybody to wear uniforms. Other students might want to say, that's not fair. Why are you forcing me to wear a uniform? You can keep wearing your uniform if you want to. You still have all those uniforms. You have clothes. You can wear them. But please let me wear whatever I want. Okay. Now, is that student's argument persuasive? Like, who wins that debate? The student who wants the rule to keep everyone wearing uniforms, or the student who says you can keep wearing uniforms if you want, but give me the right to not wear uniforms if I don't want to? All right. My suggestion is it might be reasonable to follow the student who wants to force everyone to wear uniforms. Maybe we should force everyone to wear uniforms to protect the kids who are too poor to buy other clothes. Okay? They will be made fun of, they will be ridiculed if they have to wear uniforms, or they wear things that are ratty or smelly or unfashionable, whatever, right? So in order to protect them, we require everybody to wear uniforms, all right? They don't have the option. The students who are the poorest don't have the option to buy other clothes. All right, that's analogous to this, all right? So we forbid everybody from having the right to die in order to protect those people who don't want to use it but might feel guilty or bad for not wanting to use it, all right? So that's the analogy. Okay, last argument. So maybe I should have said not third and fourth for this slide, just third reason against the right to die. Okay, the last one. And this one is pretty quick. Okay. Emanuel basically says it's possible that euthanasia would become the rule, kind of routine, due to budgetary pressure. If hospitals don't have enough money, where are we going to cut money? Well, how about these people that are just lingering in hospital beds and are not getting any better, that are sucking up a ton of resources? We could just euthanize them, kill them right away, save all that money, help other people. Okay? He says this is a reason, again, not to legalize euthanasia. Once it's legal, there's this temptation to use it for the wrong reason, budgetary pressure. Okay. All right, so that's it for my discussion of Emanuel. I've, for the most part, not given my own kind of thoughts and criticisms of these arguments, but one thing I challenge you to do is to look closely at these 4 reasons that Emanuel gives about the right to die, and ask yourself, how many of these reasons would also apply to passive euthanasia, which is, again, a technique that we all think is okay. All right, I think quite a few of these might also apply to passive euthanasia, and if that's true, I wonder how compelling the reasons are against active euthanasia and the right to die. Okay, thank you.